I'm going to say the motion passes. I think we're still waiting for one vote. So, okay, the second item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of MARTA's time and attendance software and service information system, and that'll be presented by Tyson Morris, Assistant GM for Technology. Tyson?
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Durrett, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and other members of the Business Management Committee. My name is Tyson Morris, the AGM CIO of Technology, and I'm here to present the request for a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of MARTA's Time and Attendance Software as a Service Information System, RFP P50702. If you can hearken back to your days in grade school, you may remember that taking attendance was the first thing a teacher did each morning. It was a simple exercise to make sure everyone was accounted for, and only then could the real work begin. The same principle applies here at MARTA. As you know, MARTA has a total of 7 operating divisions with a fleet size of approximately 623 vehicles. Managing the time and attendance for MARTA's dispatchers, bus and rail operators, and other represented employees is no small feat. Our dedicated employees both need and deserve a modern application, one that offers enhanced features that are listed on this slide, mobile accessibility, and significantly improved user experience. To meet these expectations and streamline workforce management, a software replacement is not just justified, it's essential. Upon award of this solicitation exercise in partnership with the union and operations, the selected vendor or contractor will be responsible for designing, furnishing, integrating, commissioning, and supporting a new scalable work bidding and time and attendance system for MARTA. Following approval by the board to advance the request for proposals, MARTA intends to seek proposals from the marketplace using clearly defined criteria for a 5-year contract term. The Office of D&I will review the procurement for DBE opportunities during the solicitation process. Finally, the Department of Technology kindly requests the Business Management Committee recommend the approval of this resolution authorizing a solicitation of proposals for the procurement of a represented employee time and attendance system, RFP P50702. Thank you. Now I return the floor to you, Chairman Pond. Sorry.
Thank you, Tyson. Could we have a motion and a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions for Mr. Morris? Well, Tyson, I guess we should all be glad they didn't have this technology when we had to attend chemistry class in college.
Be a learning curve for sure. Thank you so much.
Okay, could we have a vote, please? Missing one, but the motion passes.
Thank you once again.
The next item is a briefing for the third quarter of 25 financial highlights and financial performance indicators, and that'll be led by both Greg Patterson and Michael Jones. Greg?
Good morning, Chair Pond, Vice Chair Durrett, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and members of the Business Management Committee. I'm Greg Patterson, Deputy CFO, and it is my pleasure to present MARTA's financial highlights for the third quarter ending March 31st, 2025. We'll open up with our operating budget highlights year to date. At a summary level, MARTA budgeted operating sources of $483.9 million, which includes the net revenue and the operating carry forward you see here. Our actual revenue was $509.2 million, favorable for the quarter. Our net expenses were budgeted at $483.9 million, but our actual expenditures were $522.9 million, ending the quarter at $69 million, unfavorable to budget. The primary driver of this was the third-party liability expenses, which you will see on the detailed breakdown. The net impact of this was a variance of $43.7 million as a deficit for the third quarter. Moving on into the detail, I'll start with our favorable revenues. MARTA continues to benefit from a positive sales tax revenue with a favorable balance of $8.9 million. MARTA is also favorable on the title ad valorem taxes, excuse me, by $27.4 million. That is due to payments from Clayton County that cleared an outstanding balance from January of 2017 through December of 2024. Our passenger revenues are unfavorable by $6.5 million cumulative for the year. This is driven by a combination of increased fare evasion and faulty gate equipment at our stations, which our customer experience team appears to have finally diagnosed. There was a critical setting that would reconcile taps with the back office when service was performed on some of these machines. It was not reactivated during a transition effort. That setting has since been reactivated, and we should see some of the backlog of transactions get reconciled against our stored value. There was also a process concern that we knew about that the maintenance techs who were replacing some of the machinery were supposed to be downloading the data from it and uploading it to the overall database, and that step appeared to have been skipped in some cases. So what we're now doing is working with our accounting team and pulling what reports we can to see what the variance is between the stored value that's currently on the cards as people hold them and the stored value that's been recorded on our financial statements. The delta between that should be some of the lost fare revenue that the cash is here, but it was not recognized from an accounting perspective as a deduction from the stored value, because you can only recognize it when the system would recognize a tap as having taken the trip. Moving on to other revenue, this was unfavorable to budget by $4 million, primarily due to lower than forecasted advertising revenue and interest on reserve balances year to date. With respect to year-to-date expenses, salaries and wages were favorable by $12.6 million due to higher than forecasted position vacancies. Overtime is unfavorable to budget by $6.5 million. Vacancies, special events, and absenteeism are the primary drivers in that category. Total benefits are also unfavorable to budget by $6.8 million. This is driven by both an annual adjustment to non-represented pension benefits as well as unusually high health care claims. There are a couple of statistical outliers there. I'll note that the pension costs should normalize by the end of the fiscal year. The spike we see is early in the year. It should normalize by the end of the fiscal year. Moving on, contractual services are $3.9 million favorable to budget. This was driven by underutilized external support contracts, temporary services contracts, and professional services contracts. Total materials and supplies are favorable to budget by $2.8 million, driven by lower than forecasted costs for fuel and parts. And our largest hit to expenses is in other non-labor. That finished the quarter at $42.8 million unfavorable. That's due to the sharp increase in our third-party liability expenses. And finally, capital cost allocation was unfavorable by $30.2 million. Moving on to our financial performance for the month of March. Revenues were favorable by $300,000 and expenses were unfavorable by $12.4 million. The net impact of this was a $12.1 million deficit for the month of March. Breaking this down on the revenue slide, sales tax continues a favorable position. It was $1 million higher than forecast. Passenger revenue was under by $800,000. That's largely due to the same impacts that were discussed on the previous slide. On the expenses side, salaries and wages were unfavorable to budget by $1 million, and that's primarily due to pay accruals for professionals and operators. Overtime is unfavorable to budget by $700,000 due to the ongoing vacancies and absenteeism. And total benefits is unfavorable to budget by $1.3 million due to the higher than typical medical claim costs. Other non-labor expenses were unfavorable to budget by $5 million due to increase in third-party liability expenses. And finally, capital charges were unfavorable to budget by $3.1 million due to our lower than forecasted direct and indirect expenses to capital projects. Moving on to our ridership key performance indicators. Our passenger revenues through the third quarter, we can see that our revenues fall below the forecast, but for the month of March, we exceeded the prior fiscal year by $200,000. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, we expect to see an adjustment likely in April that should reflect some of the revenue of that stored value. We're still working out the details of that with our accounting office now. Our bus ridership figures are showing that we are performing at or above ridership forecasts across the fiscal year. March ridership of 2.8 million unlinked trips fell below the forecast, but it matched our prior fiscal year. And our rail ridership, you can see here on the slide, the data is recording the ridership is matching our prior fiscal year, but below our forecast. All right, I'm now going to hand the presentation over to Mr. Michael Jones for a review of our capital highlights.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning, Chairperson Pond, Vice Chair Durrett, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, esteemed members of the Business Management Committee, and distinguished guests. I am Michael Jones, serving as the Interim Assistant General Manager for the Centralized Program Management Office, CPMO. Today, I'm honored to present to you the FY25 third quarter capital highlights. Sources and uses for stated good repair. Under stated good repair sources, we have a positive year-to-date actuals, $366.9 million relative to budget of $339.1 million due to solid sales tax revenues, as Greg stated earlier, and strong beginning balance. As many of you know, the federal and state funds are reimbursable that sometimes lag a bit behind our original plan. We used $54 million in reserves, which is considerably less than the $80 million planned to date. Looking at our uses to date, we have spent a total of $352.7 million, roughly 70% of the $501 million anticipated to spend at this point in FY25. The main drivers are identified on the top 10 stated good repair projects coming up shortly. We have provided a graphic depiction of the actual uses relative to budget. As you see on the graph, our actual dotted line below was close to budget for the first half of the fiscal year. As Chief Rocha has stated, in the past, MARTA typically spends approximately 25% of our budget in the last quarter of the fiscal year. We expect the same uptick at the end of FY25. Here are the top 10 state of good repair projects listed in descending order based on actual spend. These top 10 projects have expended almost 85% of their anticipated budget to date. The number one project is our new rail car, of course. At $84.3 million, the project is a bit ahead of schedule due to the COVID change order that we split 50-50 with Stadler. Item 5, Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB project, pays for our Uptown lease and various software subscriptions, with the largest one being our Oracle subscription. Item 6, our bus vendor had a few delays and will deliver some of our fleet in FY26, causing the reduced spend. Item 9 is our project to update our financial system of record, Oracle, to a modern cloud-based system. We are aggressively working with our vendor to transition this summer. Hold on. Okay, sources and uses for MARTA, City of Atlanta. Our MARTA City of Atlanta sources, $43.3 million sales tax, continue to overperform relative to our budget of $41.7 million to date. The low federal state reimbursement is based on the 5 points and Summerhill delays, since both have federal and state grants. On the uses side, we have spent $38.3 million on 8 projects, which I'll discuss on the next slide. Item 1, our capital team has their hands full with Summerhill's unforeseen conditions. Sal Utilities on the south half of Hank Aaron Drive, historic trolley tracks we found, undocumented concrete basements, and other obstructions, which precipitated the below budget spend at $23.9 million compared to $52.3 million. Item 2, the 5 points transformation, has well-documented delays, which led to the 9.31 spend compared to our anticipated $26 million. Item 7, our streetcar east extension project needs additional early surveys by the planning team and additional collaboration with the City of Atlanta, which decreased our spend to $540K compared to the $7.5 million budget. Sources and uses for MARTA, Clayton County. Our MARTA Clayton County sources $26.4 million sales tax, again, is outperforming relative to the budget of 25.5 to date. On the usage side, we spent $3.7 million on 6 projects. On the next slide. The planning team has made good progress with item 1, Rapid South Lake, with completion of the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, assessment, and have a pending final class of action as a documented categorical exclusion. We also finalized our contract with the final designer, so that project's moving well. Item 4, Clayton O&M facility. Our demolition contractor is underway, and the infrastructure team is reviewing the 90% plans for the full bid package. Item 6, Justice Center Transit Hub. We are in final preparation for the bid package with anticipated bid date sometime in the fall of 2025. Overall, we have seen good progress on projects. However, the expenditures have not caught up and are reflecting low spends. We are following up with several of our consultants and vendors to encourage timely monthly billings. In conclusion, we are pleased to report our overall progress on the capital side. Sources remain strong with strong tax revenues for each of our programs, State of Good Repair, more MARTA Atlanta, and more MARTA Clayton County. The capital team has been able to execute nearly $300 million of work so far this fiscal year, and we continue to push for a strong finish to the fiscal year. This concludes my presentation. I yield back to you, Chair Pond.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions from Mr. Patterson or Mr. Jones?
I've got one out.
Okay, in order, we have Ms. Powers.
Greg, I've got a couple of questions. I want to go back to, you said there's a delta there and you anticipate with the, not the fare evasion, but whatever the glitch is on the back end with our system. I mean, what is the anticipated revenue that you know, the cash is here, but maybe it's not allocated? What's your estimate?
So it's a very early estimate, and we still have to do quite a bit of validation, but it could be upwards of around $9 million.
Okay. And do we have a prediction, since the budget hearings are coming up, do we have a prediction about what, with the new fare gates, how much, you know, what we're experiencing with fare evasion now, and how much once those new fare gate, once that new fare gate technology is employed, like what's the amount we're anticipating that we'll start seeing?
I am not an expert on that particular question. I might have to defer that question to others in the group.
Okay. And this may be more to Mr. Hunt. I know that we've got a lot of liability expenses that we have agreed on and settled. Do we have an estimate of what's left in the pipeline? I know we were still catching up from COVID, and obviously we've got tort reform coming down the pipe. But do we know how many outstanding lawsuits are right now and kind of what their status is?
Yeah, we do. I couldn't give you a firm number now, but I will bring it. Can I bring that to the board meeting?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great, just
Thank
since
you.
we're thinking about what it looks like for next year's budget.
Absolutely.
Thanks. That's all I had.
And on the fare evasion, I think we did a rough draft estimate that we were losing about $7 million a year to fare evasion, and that these new gates would be responsible for at least 50% improvement on that.
Okay. Mr. Franson?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions also. So Greg, you mentioned that the process by which we update data for this accounting function that happens for revenue collection is have some problems. My question is that this process that they go through, wouldn't this variance be caught in the week that they do it? Why would we have this variance at the quarter when when I would think that when you update this data and you see variances, you know you got a problem, you need to fix them at the moment of the process.
So, Mr. Frierson, I'll offer you my hypothesis, and it is just that, a hypothesis.
All right.
But we know that the tap gets recognized as long as the system's working on one side or the other.
Yeah.
So if you tap one machine and it doesn't register you, but you tap the second one on the tap off and it registers it, collects the fare, recognizes the revenue, we're good. So the number of transactions that hit over the time that this was happening would have to be those that you went into a faulty fare gate and you left a faulty fare gate too. Mm-hmm. So the amount of taps that would fit into this is subtle over time. So we notice when there's a large variance. Mm-hmm. You don't notice when there's a very small variance, because that could easily be explained as, hey, a slightly lower ridership than we expected that month, or maybe there was some kind of fluctuation or some activity that in the system that could be explained away in other means. It's only when the accumulation over time started to show up that it really did come to our attention. We were looking at the very reports we shared with you and said, intuitively, it does not make sense that we've seen, those of us who ride the train regularly, we've seen higher ridership growth, we've seen folks around. It doesn't make sense that we're not growing here. There probably is something missing. We need to dig into it. And that investigation started probably, I think it was in August, September of this year, we said, there's something missing here. We need to find what it is. And there were a lot of avenues we had to go down and search to try and hunt down that this step along the process was where there was a hiccup.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping that the new fare gates will give us a clear process by which we can collect this revenue and know when there's a problem immediately when we're looking at how we're collecting this data. Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. I just think that these things need to be called a lot sooner so we can be able to resolve them. And you mentioned it was August when we started looking at this problem. Here we are now in April, and we still seem to be struggling with collecting data in this whole process. I just hope that we're working on that, and that's I'm sure Kali is working on some solution. All right. My next question had to do with it has to do with the liability that we talked about, and I think Ms. Powers mentioned that also. How much more this we have to pay out so that we can know what that looks like. And when we have these liability payments that are due, is this something that we take all of it in one quarter, or is there a way we would accrue this throughout, or allocate this throughout through a prorated process throughout?
Yes, so when you see it reflected on these highlights,
Yeah.
what you're actually seeing reflected is the recognition that our exposure has gone up.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we've actually resolved, settled, or adjudicated the claims and paid out yet. So the way we account for it is when we our own folks internally who are assessing the exposure and liability that's likely to be paid out at the end, they'll give us an adjustment, and then we record it as an expenditure, and it increases a liability count that then subsequently is drawn down as a settlement is paid out.
Okay.
And so those are paid out as the settlement is resolved. It's not necessarily on a certain time interval. It's just once we get to that point where they're ready to cut the check, they cut the check at that point in time.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sir.
Mr. Hunt, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was going to append with how we reserve for claims, and but Mr. Patterson covered it.
Okay. Ms. Zine?
Where are we on headcount and vacancies? And if you had a crystal ball, where are you seeing that salary wages line and the overtime line sort of working their way out?
I'm not sure how
And
to answer the question as
Maybe
phrased.
Mr. Greenwood, could speak to that better. Are we getting closer to being fully staffed so that we can decrease at least the part of overtime that's due to vacancies?
Yeah, it's in the operating ranks. We are close to we're above 95% in terms of the number of people that we've hired. To absenteeism is a recurring issue, so that that doesn't go away. So in terms of fixed costs, high 90s in terms of what we've recruited, but the overtime is assigned to not just vacant positions but absent positions. So that's why it's an ongoing thing. I think overall in the organization, Greg, we might be 190 or so vacant positions overall, and you don't have to answer. This is my gut from the last time I was going through this, and we may not be filling all of those positions, but the vast majority of the overtime that you're referring to happens in the represented ranks, and that it's the absenteeism plus vacancy that accounts for that.
Okay, I mean, because when you look at the dollars, our under on the salary and wages makes up for the overtime.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see next year's budget of what we anticipate we need to budget for salary and wages now that are pretty well staffed up, and is the overtime being driven more for these other reasons versus open positions?
We would, yeah, you're right. We would much prefer to have to pay for or to deal with vacancies than absences, because vacancies you can plan. It's a lot more static. Absences come at inopportune times. And then, of course, we've had a number of special events where the overtime is just absolutely required, and we can see that happening again. You don't want to boost your overhead for 3 or 4 world-class events that are coming, but you do want that overtime availability.
And I'll just add one other thing. Even though we've kind of managed to keep a steady hiring rate and keep the vacancy at a lower level in the represented workforce, there's still a high turnover rate. So that churn also feeds some of this, because it takes some time for folks to get all the way through the training cycle, and sometimes they don't get all the way through the training cycle before they part ways, and then we hire again. So they have to not only be hired, but make it all the way through training and actually be actively working to be able to relieve the overtime impact too. And that churn is also one of the things we see in the impact.
Yeah. I mean, and I know we spent a lot of time negotiating the last contract and felt like everybody should have been pleased with the result. What are we, what other steps are being taken to try to address the absenteeism? Because that's really a strain on the system.
Yeah, we've done a number of things. We've actually made some organizational changes. Peter Bruno, I don't know if Peter's in the room, but Peter's been instrumental, and we've hired some specific positions, workforce superintendents, and they have made some good inroads on that. There was a lot of issue to be reviewed when it comes to, the way people are able to take time off and the veracity of their claims, and so there's a lot of that claim management that's going on. We've also, you may recall, we changed the attendance bonus from an annual bonus to a quarterly bonus, and in so doing, we're encouraging more people to maintain good to perfect attendance and rewarding them on a quarterly basis, so the hill's not that high, and we see an effect of that. We see that folks are actually improving their I don't remember the numbers, but the number of folks that were subject to those quarterly attendance bonus have increased in a significant fashion.
And then last question, and it might be for you, Mr. Greenwood. Looking at the ridership numbers, it actually looks like we're under our forecast for both bus and rail. For rail, it looks like, for many of the, we've gotten even with last year in the past month, but, what do you think is going on with us, not only not meeting forecast, but it falling below the prior year actuals for this year?
I think a lot of it goes back to what Greg was saying in terms of the TAPs, and so the revenue ridership, we are enjoying the revenue. It's just not showing here because of the technical issue that Greg has shown, and so I think my comments are best placed at the end of the next period when we actually see if that correction shows itself. In terms of the forecast to actual, it's a forecast. So this is it's 50% of the performance of the ridership and 50% the accuracy of our forecast. But I will say that year over year, since COVID, we've continued to see a year-over-year increase in ridership. It's just in the last few months that we, based on what I believe is accurate, a technical issue at the gate, we've seen that level off. Now, I note that in March of 25, we're back to even. And with the correction that we're expecting in April, then that might be a very different answer. The answer may be, in fact, that we didn't lose, pace, but we'll wait to see if that pans out.
Do you think we'll have that number by the budget meeting of the TAP resolution issue, or a better, closer estimate on it?
No, the budget meeting is in a week or two, doesn't? Yeah. So
Okay.
I don't think we'll have that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sagabi?
All right, thank you for the update. Most of the questions for you, Greg. So just one, when we see the reconciliation, will we see it month over month, or will it all hit April? Like sometimes the reconciliation all hits in a single month. I just want to make sure we'll get a historical view on a chart like that.
It's going to look something similar to what you see last year's January that I have up on screen right here. It's a one-time correction that'll be applied in, so you'll see a big jump in April.
Okay, on the revenue side and on the linked trips as well, or?
I'm going to have a conversation with some of my highly esteemed colleagues over research and analysis to determine how we show that on the trips part, because I also don't know the level of, I'm getting a little technical, I apologize, but I don't know the level of data that's attached to these individual TAP transactions, and if they're going to have, date of transaction tied to it in such a way that we can then reconcile across all periods in the past or not.
I guess, totally understand. My one request would be, as we're working through it, like, totally understand on the revenue. I don't know how the TAP data would come in. I just want to make sure we don't recognize it all in April and like show 3 million in April. So just to the extent that on the linked trip, so we can keep clean data, making sure either it layers in over the time period or we don't layer it in at all and it doesn't inflate April as we start to look at this coming.
Yes, sir.
No. Okay, awesome. The second question was just looking at the Q3 kind of performance. It made me wonder, and I haven't looked at all the priors, but as we look at year to date and we look at kind of our net operating stance, like I view this and it says 70 million in the red. I kind of don't always look at the 70. I kind of think of operating, so I really think 38. Like I think the capital is a different bucket. But if we were to look year to date from an operating expense standpoint, do you know where we sit cumulatively?
Well, cumulatively, as far as like the total expenses are concerned?
No. So our net position.
Oh, our net position.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I'm so used to going off the net. Obviously, it's not as bad. I mean, basically where we sit right now from the expenses being over by 38.8 and our operating sources being above 25.3, the net's close, but it's still to the deficit right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the primary driver, of course, is the casualty and liability.
Yep. Okay. That's really helpful. And I think just as we go into budget, this is a really important picture for us to be thinking about because, I don't know how much longer we have carry forward, but, hopefully we're walking into a budget where we're going to feel good around what that means on a quarterly, annual basis from an expense and a revenue standpoint. The other question I just had was in March, like we're talking about absenteeism in different pieces. Any color on, like I look at our salaries and wages and they're over budget by $1 million. And then overtime and benefits are. So is that related to, is that accounting? Like how do
accounting.
we?
It deals with when we're establishing the budget and we set which days and which payroll events happen. Sometimes we miss the actual day that it falls when it's right at the month transition, and that's what you're seeing here.
Okay. So then we'll probably see like a correction in April that'll go down.
That's correct.
Perfect. Awesome. This was just a question, and I saw the bank. I was looking at capital expenditure, and I saw Bankhead platform extension. I know in a prior world we were talking about that being completed in 2027, and I know that's no longer the case. And I'm looking at the expenditure numbers here, and know that there's no way we're going to do that. Or do we feel good about our new rail cars and like having the space on all rails to be able to operate? I think part of the extension was going to allow us to have a single car type across the system. Are we still going to be able to do that with the timeline on Bankhead?
So is the question, are we going to make sure the cars can fit on the tracks, or I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I guess the broader question is, are we gonna be able to put the new rail cars on the Green Line?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're just gonna run shorter ones until we have the platform extended, or?
So Carrie, you want to explain the Bankhead or anybody? Because there's some details on Bankhead that I'm not privy to right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jacob, we would need to extend the platform at Bankhead before we could run the new rail cars on the Green Line, because the new rail cars, that's going to be a 4-car configuration, open gangway all the way through. So we would need to continue to run legacy trains, a married pair, until we extended the platform.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I think that's until 2031. So we're going to have kind of the dual cars on there for several years once we put the new cars on.
On the Green Line, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I've got one question for Greg, and it goes back to your comment, the larger part of the expenses always come in at the last quarter, near year end. And you touch base on the liability issues. You were booking that as accrual based on the estimate. But when we get invoices from contractors, is that going to the accounting system as an expense on an accrual basis or when they get paid?
It's on an accrual basis, sir.
Okay. That's all I have. Okay, any other questions? All right, the last two items under other matters, and that's a process where we use the state of Georgia, our unit-based contract, to contract, and there'll be two resolutions using that contract coming before the board at the next meeting. Any other items? If not, meeting adjourned.
All right, all right. I'd like to.
Oh yeah, I need a picture of this from Melissa.
I'm gonna call to order the meeting. We do have some distinguished guests today, so.
Hold on 1 second. Say cheese.
All right. If the dogs do any mentorship, I have a dog at my home that could value greatly some mentorship from these great leaders. All right. Ace, you have been shown up today. All right. I'd like to call to order our April 24th, 2025 Planning and Capital Programming Committee meeting for the MARTA agency. With that, I'll pass it to Collie real quick for a quick update.
Thank you, Jacob. I just want to take the opportunity here, since we have most of us here today, I wanted to introduce Paul Lopes. Paul, if you could just wave your hand there. The board will recall a memo back in earlier April that we had introduced Paul as the newest member of our leadership team on the C-suite. Paul is the Chief of Operational and Urban Planning and comes to us to staff a newly organized division inclusive of real estate development, asset management, vehicle procurement, local corridors and hubs, technical services and service planning, scheduling, and technical training. So quite a cadre of responsibilities that Paul is going to be taking on, and in so doing also enables some of our existing chiefs a deeper focus on some of the capital expansion and operational KPIs that we have been discussing. Paul has over 35 years of progressive responsible expertise and experience in this space. Most recently, the CEO and general manager of the Ontario line for Transdev Canada. He's got experience in Toronto, in Brampton, and several cities across the globe, and has been expert in implementing new modes of transportation, including most notably BRT. So we're excited that Paul is with us, and we trust that his experience, his expertise, his Bachelor of Commerce, his MBA, and his project management credentials and his certified human resources credentials will all come to bear to the benefit of MARTA. So welcome, Paul. Oh, Paul. Sorry, Paul. There are a number of folks that are saying they couldn't see you, so would you mind standing?
Perfect.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome to the team. We're glad to have you on board. All right, so we'll jump into the agenda. We've got 4 agenda items for today. So agenda item number 1, approval of the March 27, 2025 Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a move in a second? Oh, Ms. Hyde?
I was present at the meeting. I've spoken to Tyrene about it, and the minutes reflect that I made some motions, so I just want to correct it to reflect that I was in attendance.
All right, so the meeting minutes will be corrected to reflect that. Any other additional comments? All right, please vote. All in favor? The motion carries. All right, we'll head to our second agenda item, briefing to present a significant change in resolution authorizing the modification and contractual authorization for the Summerhill Bus Rapid Transit BRT construction contract, IFB B50070. Mr. Joshi, Director of Expansion Program Management, will be giving the update. Thank you, Mr. Joshi.
All right, good morning. Chair Zagabe, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, and members of the board. I have kind of a dual purpose today. Just want to go through the agenda real quick. This basically is to go over what a significant change is with the Summerhill Rapid project, Summerhill Rapid A project. So I'm going to kind of go through what a significant change is through the IGA process that we have with the City of Atlanta, kind of go through our procurement rules on how we can implement a change, a significant change. Talk a little bit about some of the cost impacts that we've experienced on the project itself, share some photos of those unique situations, and then talk about some project cost changes, then finally ask for the modification request. And we're going to talk about a phased service rollout that may potentially be a solution to getting revenue service back for a segment of this alignment for Rapid A prior to World Cup. So again, the purpose is to brief the board on the need for a significant change per the MARTA IGA with City of Atlanta. And I'll go into detail on how that works. And then second is to request a modification to the contract authorization for Rapid A line. This is in accordance with our MARTA Act and the procurement guidelines. All right, so for a significant change process per the IGA, if we deviate from the budget 10%, we need to come before the board and actually follow a process to go ahead and get that implemented. So that change originates in our program management team meeting that we had actually conducted that on April 17th, and then it will float up to the Program Governance Committee with the City of Atlanta. So the PGC, that meeting was held on April 21st. During that meeting, there were some questions specific to how our budgets were broken down. So we actually had a follow-up meeting earlier this week to kind of go into detail about some of those nuances and some of the costs that were associated with this increase request. Subsequent to that, we have some additional information that's going to be shared, and we're going to wait for that decision prior to us being able to fully implement this. But we wanted to bring this before the BCP and definitely try to resolve this potentially before the full board, which is later on next week. So again, the process: we go to PMT, we go to PGC, we have a 14 days for it to go to the mayor through a memo. Following that, the mayor shares it, I believe, with their city council, and then we come before the board. So that's sort of the sequence of events. And for the MARTA procurement guidelines, per MARTA procurement guidelines, if we are to exceed the authorized amount, which in this case, in March of 2023, Summerhill Rapid A had an authorized amount of $65.9 million, and we expect our construction cost impacts to exceed that amount, so that's the reason why we're coming before the board here. So let's talk a little bit about what we've experienced at Summerhill or Rapid A. We've experienced, the top two are shallow water lines associated with Department of Watershed Management infrastructure that is along the Hank Aaron Drive alignment. So that portion of the alignment we've experienced, essentially when we stripped off the pavement, we get below the graded aggregate base, we expose some shallow water utility lines. So there's a myriad of this happening along Hank Aaron, along with gas lines, and I'm going to show you a few photographs of these things. And that's definitely something that needs to be remedied before we can go ahead and install new pavement and then continue our work. The second thing, and I want to also note that this was on the critical path, which means that every day that goes by on this contract that we don't complete this work is another day that's added on to the back end of it's essentially a delay to the entire project. Cost impact number 2, we needed to increase the size of the water main along this section of Hank Aaron. So if we are going to touch the service mains that go to residential homes, per city ordinance, we need to increase the size of the water main from 6 inches to 8 inches. So that's a much larger infrastructure effort where you're going to have to trench the roadway and actually increase, do a lot of subsurface work, put it all back, and then continue the work of doing pavement operations. So again, I just wanted to also state that this is also part of critical path. Number 3 is South Downtown redesign. So at the very start of this program, we had a design that was in play, and I believe the City of Atlanta had installed bike paths in the South Downtown area that was not coordinated with our final design. So when that happened, we had to go back, pause the effort for doing construction downtown, kind of flip how we were going to tackle the project, and then redesign the South Downtown corridor. So there was a bit of time there that we had to basically stop, pause, kind of redefine how we were going to tackle the project. We actually moved Archer Western, the contractor, to the Hank Aaron portion of the project and pulled them out of South Downtown because there just wasn't enough time to start to do the work in South Downtown and then miss legislative session, which was a key milestone in the project. We've also had unmarked utilities, including gas lines, fiber optic cables, signal cabling, historic trolley tracks. I'll show you pictures of this. There's historic trolley tracks in the South Downtown corridor and also along Hank Aaron. When this happens, we have to, again, bring out an archaeologist, take a look at the kind of track that we've impacted. At that point, we have to go to the State Historic Preservation Office. They have to provide us some feedback on how they would like us to handle that trackway, and then we would have to move forward. We also had to get guidance from the Federal Transit Administration. So this was a unique situation. We now have a triage and a process in place to be able to handle this. It's definitely one of the lessons learned that came out of this project. And so as we continue to go down, we will experience more along Hank Aaron, because what we did after we discovered the first one, we did ground penetrating radar for the entire alignment to try to understand what else is out there, right? Now, ground penetrating radar has its limitations. Without getting too far in the weeds here, it's only going to tell you what's on the top 3 to 5 feet. but you're really not going to know the depth of what you're tackling. So we do have ground penetrating radar data for the rest of the alignment. We know that there's more stuff to see along the way on Hank Aaron, south of Ormond, which we'll show that here in a minute. We also found some multiple subsurface conditions, underground vaults and underground parking deck, which you may have heard about in the AJC. Animal remains, voids, a lot of unique conditions as you go into the South Downtown area. We also had some cost increases, cost escalations due to Buy America requirements for the passenger information display signs. And we had pantograph chargers, which is the charger that we're going to have at Carver Station to charge our battery electric buses. Those costs have also increased during these time frame, and that's across the country. So I wanted to kind of share a few photos, and I guess I'll start on the left-hand side here and then kind of work my way counterclockwise. But that on the left-hand side is an underground parking deck that we found underneath the sidewalk. We were just doing horizontal boring operations, and when the contractor went to go open up the sidewalk, he kept looking and he's like, wait, there's something much larger underneath here. So we had a structural engineer take a look at it, and that's what we discovered, was that there was underground parking deck that kind of extended from the into the city right of way that shouldn't have been there. And so we notified the city, and you know, that's, you can actually see the sidewalk as we go counterclockwise. You can see the sidewalk section that was impacted. I believe the city is in talks with the owner, and they're working through remedying that situation. To the right there, that's an underground vault with old brick walls. This was over at Mitchell and Forsyth. This is right where we were going to be putting our station. We open up the floor, and then all of a sudden we see a cap, we see some trolley tracks, and then we see a vault. So again, we had to stop, make sure the archaeologist takes a look at it, make sure it's not historic, and then come up with the design as we can go ahead and remedy that. To the top right, that's an animal bone. It's not human remains, but as soon as we came across that condition, we had to go ahead and bring Atlanta Police Department out to confirm that is animal remains. Our guess is it's a horse. We don't really know, but we had to wait until we had to get a ticket from the Atlanta Police Department before we could resume work in that area. So it was a little bit of a disruption at that point. So let's talk a little bit about the unmarked and shallow utilities. So on the top left, this is a shallow water line. You can see that we were just below grade. I mean, we had just scraped off the top. This is at a service line, a water service line that was not where it was supposed to be. Again, we were coming across more of these as we were potholing, and so from that perspective, we knew that some of these lines needed to go at a deeper level. We had an unmarked gas line. You can see that second one at the bottom left. That's extremely shallow. That should have been at least 48 inches deep. But that's what we had experienced. Of course, that's very dangerous. We had to pause construction at that point, have the utility owner come out, validate and verify that it's either it's a safe condition or what they need to do to remedy it. We've come across a myriad of unmarked water lines. Some are active, some are not active. They just kind of spaghetti their way through South Downtown. And so when this happens, Archer Western has to pause. We call out the utility owner, they take a look at it, and then we move forward. A lot of these have to be marked per Georgia Utility GUCC. Basically, they have to go and spray and mark where these utilities are. In some cases, the GUCC marks something and that it's about 15 feet away. So these are just some of the things that we've experienced on this project. And lastly, the trolley tracks. This on the left-hand side is a view looking north on Hank Aaron. Everything that's in that bright white is actually a trolley track. In the middle, that's the GPR scan that we had done with our geotech consultant. And so, as you can see, after we discovered some of these trolley tracks, the GPR scan did show that there was something there, but it's not definitive, right? We've utilized the same GPR scan further down Hank Aaron, south of where this is, and we expect, or we anticipate we're going to find some more. So that is some of what we're planning for when we come before the board here today. Over here on the bottom right is, again, trolley tracks that we had found that we just had to excavate around. So again, it's not a You can't just take a bucket full of dirt and just start to work, right? You have to kind of gently work around it, hand dig. You have to get these things exposed to understand the full magnitude of what we've exposing. So we had come before the board before for a significant change. At that time, it was for $86.4 million. When we go further down, you can take a look at what our Tiger Grant expenditures were, what was part of more MARTA funds. We are asking for $30.3 million increase to the authorized amount, okay? So, and I'm going to kind of detail that in the next slide, but that's what you're going to see here for the project estimate for significant change number 2. That's why we've gone from the $73.7 million to the $104.022. Further down, you'll see the additional pavement amounts, which is general purpose lane pavement that's going to be reimbursable by the City of Atlanta. And then, you know, at the very bottom, you'll see sort of our more MARTA funds that are going to be towards this this effort, which is $110.3 million. So the modification request, we were originally authorized for $65.9 million. We are asking for $30.3 million. So the new total authorization is for $96.245, $441 and 10 cents. I need to qualify this, right? So, you know, the reason for the note. This does not mean that we're spending every one of these dollars. What these dollars is it basically giving us the flexibility to be able to write change orders, to issue lettered change orders and keep construction moving if and when we come across these conditions. We do have 4 change orders that we are currently negotiating, 3 of which we've gotten fairly close to a final summary record of negotiation, and 1 that we're still negotiating, which is going to be a little bit more complex. So that being said, we are audited for any change order that's over $200,000. We have to go through an audit process. So they're going to have to, the contractor has to substantiate labor hours, materials, you know, their equipment that's on site. Basically, they have to provide us backup. And so we go through that process. We do the negotiation up front. They give us their estimate. We have an independent cost estimate that we compare it to, and then we finalize the negotiation to allow them to work. In order to make sure we don't delay the process, we issue something called a lettered change order that allows them to continue work. So it's 80% of what a rough order of magnitude would be. So we know that these, you know, what we've experienced is going to cause a delay to the project. That part is definitely there, but we still have a goal, right? We want to get service out to the public as soon as possible. So what we've done is we've taken a look at a phased service rollout. And what this means is that phase 1, anything from Summerhill northward, and this may actually now extend to Ormond. We've been able to put in Ormond Street stations as well. We could potentially do Ormond Street all the way into South Downtown as a phase 1 rollout for service. And we're trying to target April 2026. That would allow us to be able to get service in place prior to the World Cup, which I think would be a very big win. Everything south of Ormond Street to Carver is where we're experiencing these shallow utilities, where we're going to have to do an upsize of the water main, where we're going to have to basically do service line drops. All the bulk of the work is in that segment. Carver Station is still going to be worked on. We are going to be working on putting in pantograph chargers, and we actually have activity there right now. So Peoplestown Station would be the one that'd be affected by this, but we are still going to target September 2026 to include Ormond, Peoplestown, and Carver and have that full rollout by September 2026. So that is our plan to mitigate this as best we can. So with that, we request a resolution authorizing the modification and contractual authorization for Summerhill BRT construction contract IFB B50070. And I want to caveat this. The resolution presentation goes to full board contingent upon the Program Governance Committee approval, which is still pending. So we've provided some additional information to PGC, and so we're waiting for their feedback. But so we cannot go to full board and authorize this until we have their concurrence. So with that, turn that over to Mr. Zaghavi.
All right, thank you very much for the update. We'll take questions. First up, I see Ms. Hardage.
I just have a couple of questions. Sorry, if we go back to the slide where you listed all of the delays
Yes.
and we go down those lists.
Yep.
I know that before we start projects, we have a lot of in-house work done as well as consultants that come on board to help with some of the due diligence behind the scenes.
Yes.
So none of this was caught with the due diligence when it comes to trolley tracks that are historic? I mean, I don't know about parking decks and, you know, and vaults and some of this stuff we can question, but the trolley tracks are historic. Why would we not know that?
That's a great question.
Yeah, so for each of these, Ms. Hartage, we will look at the opportunity, should someone have known this, should a designer have known this, and we do have mechanisms to pursue those costs. I really don't want to disclose too much here, but that is a regular practice that we'll look at that and see if someone should have known this.
Well, I'm not pointing fingers, but I'm just sitting here going, I mean, you can look, I don't know about vaults and parking decks being in the wrong place or whatever, but historic trolley tracks are just that. I mean, they've been here, they should be in maps and records, and that one I just can't figure out. As well as the fact that, I don't know if there's any other issues with the utilities that are not buried enough, and if that goes back to any of the utility companies that originally put those in and didn't do them correctly, I'm not saying that we can point fingers at anyone, but I just feel like that there's some people that should be held a little accountable for some of these errors.
And absolutely, it is our intention on any of these that we can hold folks accountable. I'll be clear on the utilities on the south side of Hank Aaron. The as-builts that we were given are not accurate. So when these, you know, the water lines are not installed to any sort of standard, they should be buried much deeper.
Mr. Durrett.
For this phased rollout, do we know how the bus rapid transit vehicle will be able to do its U-turn to come back? Is that going to be a problem?
No. So right now, that's exactly what the due diligence is being done right now with our bus operations on where the turnarounds are going to be. We have to have a whole operating plan that's going to be built around this. So we have initially gone to them. We've taken a look at it's a viable position. It's a viable thing that we can do. Now they're working out the fine-tuning, the details.
And related to that, the fact that the Carver station is at the belt line is important. Is it likely that we can put something else in there to sort of get people to and from the belt line to where BRT will be functioning in that summer period?
Yeah, no, I don't believe so. I think right now, from what go ahead.
Or is it just a construction zone and you're not going to want to do that?
Yeah, it's maintenance of traffic. So yeah, currently that's not part of this effort, but I do know that Atlanta Beltline has something they're doing in parallel, working with I think the development that's right across the street to try to get some sort of tie-in and a ramp down to the Beltline at that space. So I do believe that they have an ongoing effort that they're looking at.
Thank you. Mr. Bond.
Compliment you for the phasing process. That's, I think, some work and a good result. I have a couple of questions. I remember something like a year and a half to 2 years ago, this project came up and there was budget increase costs from 60 to around $90 million. It included some of these things. Was that a different kind of notice or approval, or am I recalling something incorrectly?
I wasn't there at that time. Maybe Kay
Yes.
could speak.
We talked about
So
a lot of these items increasing, and this goes back almost 2 years ago. So.
Yep, that's correct. So this project started off at $58 million, which was the Tiger Grant application in the FY 2017 Tiger Grant application that the city had submitted. At 60% design, we did a full bottoms-up reassessment of both the cost and the schedule. That was significant change number one that we came to this board and did a briefing on, and we were approved with the city through PGC. And that went to $86.9 million.
Yeah.
So that was you know, the 86.9 million that you see was the approved amount from the PGC the first time around for the significant change. And there were different items. Actually, that was done at 60% design. It was done before this project was bid. We were aware of some of the COVID impacts of cost, and we actually had done a large cost reduction effort. And you saw similar charts because we actually used the format to state, you know, where some of the things were, what were the items that we didn't absolutely need on the project. We did a pretty considerable cost reduction at that point in time, but at that point in time, we also did you know, the overall cost in schedule impact increase.
Okay. AG, I do understand unforeseen conditions, and that's part of getting something done in an urban environment, but I want to go back to the main water line that needs to be enlarged. If a developer was putting a shopping center there, would he be required to enlarge that water line?
My understanding is that it is part of city ordinance. So we were told that because it's a 6-inch water main, if we're going to be changing the service lines, tying to a 6-inch water main, we have to do the whole unit. Basically take the service main, bring that down to the right depth, and then we're also going to have to increase the size of that water main.
So expanding, and that's a lot of distance on that water line, so expanding that, that's a cost for the project, not for the city's watershed department?
It's a good question. It's a question that's on the table.
It seems to me that if we expanded a water line to help the city's water system, that I would challenge whether that belongs in the cost.
It was something that was brought up. The other thing is that, you know, again, we're going 6 to 8 inches. That water main is going from that, it's in a residential section. That segment is really just, again, from Ormond to Carver, right? Everything north of that is not experiencing that sort of upsize, right? It's because we're not going that deep. So.
Okay. And going back to Ms. Hartage's comments, something like that, I mean, you're looking at the city review permitting code process. We knew that water line was 6 inches before we started the project, right?
Yeah. In this case, and you know, when this was discovered, it's the design was done by Department of Watershed Management. So it was a design completed by Watershed Management, provided to us, and we had Archer Western take over that scope of work because of timing. So it would have taken Department of Watershed Management a little bit longer to be able to install this work. So they gave us the design, we incorporated into our contract, and then that's the scope of work that we had to utilize to be able to continue our work. We were trying to minimize impact, right, to the overall project because they'd have to get in before we could finish the work. So from a risk standpoint, we decided to take it on as part of Archer Western's contract. But this was all designed by them, and we're just basically carrying forward their design.
Well, in listening to that, and you answer my instinct, I just, this seems like a City of Atlanta call, so I don't know how all this will play out. You guys will do the right thing and do the best you can, but it's no doubt this should be could be a City of Atlanta cause. Okay, one other question, and this goes back to we hear about delays. How much of these delays are created by having to go back to FTA? When we change something, we change some very minor things when there's FTA funding.
No, I don't think it's, you know, from the process for the trolley tracks, for instance, right? You know, I can speak to that. I mean, this process for the trolley tracks is essentially we find the trolley tracks, we notify FTA, FTA tells us what the process is to go to SHPO, and then we go to SHPO, and we carried it forward. You know, I think the timing for SHPO is what was, it takes a little bit of time, but I think everybody was notified immediately. Everybody knew that this was something that had to happen very quickly, so we were able to kind of tackle it. It was not on critical path at that time.
I know sometimes projects get a bad rap due to delays, but a lot of that is the system going back and forth to FTA. So,
yeah.
Question answered. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Jones?
So there's a heavy rail line on the western end of Carver Station, and Mr. Durrett mentioned Atlanta Beltline, this Carver Station being there. What is the access point for people on the other side of that? I think it's a Norfolk Southern line.
There's a crosswalk right there. So there's a sidewalk crosswalk that takes you right basically to that apartment. There's a new apartment building that's on it's the northwest quadrant, and that's where they're going to have a tie into the Beltline at that point.
Okay.
All right. If no more questions, I'll just make a comment. One, thank you for the update and all the hard work here. Two, I really don't like that the project is going to now cost 2 times what we originally thought it would. Yeah. That said, I think we have to ground ourselves in the fact that this is the region's first ever BRT, and we're doing something this region has never done before. And two, it's the very first horizontal major project of this entire program, and we're doing it on very old roads that haven't been touched in this manner in a long time. So kudos to you and the entire team that's working on it. We don't like to see cost increases, but we're doing something that is very innovative for the agency, and sometimes you learn lessons as you go, and appreciate you laying it out so clearly. All right, with that, do we have a motion and a second to on this resolution? I see we do, so please vote. All right, I see the motion passes, and just calling out that it passes contingent on PGC. So we'll continue to watch for that before going to full board. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jacob, I want to thank you for your comments just now. I really appreciate that perspective.
Absolutely. All right, we'll head on to agenda item 3, another very exciting, innovative update. Briefing on NextGen bus network redesign from Mr. Van Sickle, Director of Technical Services and Service Planning. The floor is yours, sir.
All right. Good morning, Chair Zagabe, Vice Chair Worthy, members of the committee, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, and other members of the executive team present. Happy to be here this morning. I'm still getting used to the clicker, my apologies. And I'm happy to be here this morning to provide an update on our NextGen bus network redesign project. As you may know, we just wrapped up an extensive round of public engagement, and so in this presentation we'll detail some of what we heard and what we're doing with it as we work about refining the network and then move towards public hearings and into some next steps. So just to start, a quick recap of the project. As you may know, this is kind of a first-of-a-generation project to redesign our bus system. Most changes to our network over the years have been gradual, kind of analyzed and implemented markup by markup. Even our larger changes were typically rolled out across a longer period of time. And so this is really the first kind of all-at-once comprehensive look at the entire bus network as a system. And we believe it's the largest of its kind since MARTA's founding. To recap the timeline, we kicked off the project in 2021 with a presentation to the board, and that was followed shortly by the development of 2 very different alternative concepts for the network. One of those was focused primarily on generating ridership and provided a kind of smaller, tighter network of very frequent lines. The alternative to that was a much more expansive network designed to maximize geographic coverage, to take the network in as many places in our service area as it could go, but at the expense of a lot of that frequency and convenience. And so those 2 very different concepts were shared with the public in 2022 in a series of public and hybrid meetings. Those really were intended to gauge what the public wanted, and it was paired with an extensive survey effort too. So there was an online survey and plenty of canvassing across the transit system to get a feel for which kind of system the public would prefer to have. What we found from that was kind of somewhere in the middle. We did have a majority of responses in favor of a more ridership-centric system, but we also had a notable minority in favor of a coverage-oriented system and a fair margin that couldn't decide between the two. With that feedback, in 2023, the board provided policy guidance to the project, really in line with that, directing us to design a system that fell kind of in the middle between those 2 concepts, but a significant step towards ridership from the system that we have designed today in the system currently. So with that policy guidance, moving into 2024, then we set about the work of developing and designing this draft network for the NextGen project. We had a series of collaborative workshops with local government partners, stakeholder groups, of course our partner transportation agencies like the state DOT and the other transit operators in the region. And we did a lot of analysis on the first draft network, looking at its outcomes, who and how it would benefit our riders, and also took a step to the side to spend some extra time working on equity adjustments based on the first results in that very first sketch. So with those adjustments made, we had our first draft, which we have recently conducted an extensive public engagement period. We started with some virtual meetings in December of 2024, and then set about another 2.5 months or so of additional activities that I'll summarize on the next slide here. With that, and detailed in the rest of this presentation, we're going about refining the network and making some adjustments based on what we heard as part of our process to represent that final draft to the public and then come back to the board for an adoption and approval process. Summarizing the public engagement that we just wrapped up, we held about 54 public meetings. That was a mix of virtual meetings, but plenty of in-person meetings. And we held those all over the system. So they were held in many different locations. We tried to make sure that we were spreading out and giving people all over the 3-county area an opportunity to attend one of our in-person events. We also had about 20 different employee-focused internal engagements. Those consisted of lunch and learn opportunities. We had multiple visits to the bus garages, including trying to catch that first shift early morning before pullout. And we also held an employee-focused open house and some other town hall meetings at some of the facilities as well. I'm going to flip to the bottom section of the slide really quick. We held 34 different tabling events at 20 different rail stations, trying to make sure that we were directly interacting with passengers as well. Our project team and our planning team were out there talking to passengers, and we also got a lot of really good feedback in those engagements from our operators too while they were on layover. And we also had a canvassing effort to supplement what was being done to get surveys out and responses in the stations as well as on our website. Over 40 of our routes were canvassed, including some of the ones that we felt were the most significantly affected by the changes we've been proposing. All told, that yielded us about 4,600 different survey results for the project, and that also included 3,000 written comments with a lot of really detailed feedback from people about suggestions, concerns, and praise. So we'll cover some of those in a little more detail shortly too. Some key themes from the feedback that we've received. A majority of responders do approve of the draft network and feel that it will connect them to more places in less time. However, about 30% of the survey responders did disagree with that statement, and another about 17 or 18% in the middle, kind of neither agreed nor disagreed. This is actually pretty similar results to what we saw as far as the preferences between the ridership and the coverage networks back when we did our early public engagement phase, so there is some consistency in those results. Despite the fact that we do have to have budget constraints in the system, 24% of respondents did still wish that they could see more frequency on the maps and that we could design more frequency into the draft network. And about 42% of the comments had very specific routes that were mentioned. Some of them were very general, please don't change this route, or we love this route. But there were also a lot of very specific comments. We had members who actually came to meetings with route maps that they had created and turn lists in hand, very much the way that we would write them ourselves. So we had some folks who really prepared to give us detailed feedback in this process. And lastly, this was a very positive result. We saw that a majority of the responders were regular MARTA riders, responding that they rode daily or almost daily. Getting into some of the specific comments, we wanted to share some samples of what we heard, so these are derived directly from our comment log. Starting with a very positive comment in the upper left, somebody called the network stupendous and gave us some positive feedback on our interactive map, which was really great to hear. You see some comments here really addressing the desire for more frequency, and then you also see comments kind of on the other side of the spectrum here looking at concerns about coverage loss in places where we proposed not to continue operating. One of those in the lower left is looking at the area of Ponce de Leon Avenue, kind of between Highland Avenue and East Lake Drive, kind of on the city limits between Atlanta and Decatur. That was our top commented issue. We heard a lot of feedback and had over 100 letters about that one. And as a result, in the refinement, we are working to try and address coverage in that area by providing a microtransit or an on-demand option as part of the network. Another example, we did hear some concerns and a request for an on-demand zone on Holcomb Bridge East, kind of out east of Georgia 400 towards Gwinnett County, as well as a desire for more connections further west on Crossville Road and Highway 92. While we're unable in the constraints of the budget to provide that on-demand zone, the new network will actually bump over on Crossville Road a little bit, connecting to 2 additional grocery stores and shopping centers and a number of senior residential communities. And a third one to mention is Route 68 in West End. This was another one of our top commented issues. We had a lot of concerns about a proposed loss of service on Beecher Street near the West End community. And as a result of that, then we are also in the refinement process looking at a fixed route option that would maintain service down that road and also strengthen connections to the Lee and White development, where there's recently been a Grady outpatient facility opened. So there's a lot more feedback like this, so this is just kind of excerpt from what we had. But with that, I wanted to share what we are doing with it. In the course of the refinement process here, we started by looking at all of the feedback. It was categorized, analyzed, and we were able to identify themes and specific top routes and top issues that rose kind of to the top of the feedback. There are other changes that we also looked at just operationally and with expertise from internal team and certainly what we heard from our operators. All of those things were prioritized, looking at what we could do as far as budget, what the ridership impacts could be, equity, and of course operational safety. So all of those things were prioritized to move into an alternatives development phase. Some of these changes could just be short or very simple things, nudge the boundary of a microtransit zone, maybe a few blocks one way or another, flip a route from one street to another. But some of them simply weren't that easy. And so we did go through a process of looking at alternative routes or multiple alternatives for route changes. And in some cases where multiple routes are operating together, kind of reevaluating the structure of how they operate in a neighborhood. So from that, we've been working to try and identify which of those options moves forward into the final plan. And as a result of that, with the final plan, we'll be updating the final report. If you recall, there was a draft report with the last version of the network that included a lot of information kind of route by route, as well as all of the impacts and analysis that we concluded. We'll also be updating all of our maps, the interactive tools, route profiles. A preliminary Title VI assessment was previously done on the draft network, and of course that will be updated to reflect the final network. And all of the other collateral that we've produced will be updated as well. So with that, we are working with our external affairs group, and 6 public hearings are being scheduled for mid-May where we can share this final refined version of the network with the public. Like our other public hearings, it will include a community listening session. We'll have our planning team and our project team there at those locations before the meeting so that people can ask us questions, and we can have a dialogue and look at all the materials together. This project definitely presents major service changes that would require these public hearings under the MARTA Act. And so we're also trying to make sure that these are scheduled in different locations around the system as well so that there's a convenient option for everyone. So next steps after the refinement and the public hearings would be coming back to the board with a full detailed report on the network, as well as a report of what we heard in the public hearings. If the board approves, then as we work towards a launch at the end of this year, we'll have very full to-do lists internally, lots of departments and people working on lots of kind of service change preparation tasks. But of course, a big part of that will also be public engagement, again, to make sure that we can educate the public on the changes to come and that we want to surprise nobody as far as the changes that are coming. We want to make sure that the public is ready. Once the network launches, then that's not really the end of it. So we'll be keeping a close eye and evaluating the performance of the network. Part of that will be the type of performance analysis that MARTA does on the routes on an ongoing basis, but we'll also be keeping a keen eye towards potential problems or things that don't work out quite as we planned. If we see crowding in one area or something where there's a problematic turn, we'll be working to make those little tweaks to make sure that the network can be adjusted and run smoothly. And with that, that's my last slide, so I return the floor to you, Chair Zagabe. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions? First up, I see Mr. Durrett. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Ryan, thanks for an excellent presentation. I guess from a revenue perspective for the, we're talking about making sure we can serve more people. More people are using our bus network to get around the entire system. If we know what the cost per rider is today using the bus system, do we have a sense by modeling and thinking about what the increased ridership would be, what the cost per rider would be for the enhanced next generation bus service, and combine that with what the cost would be for the on-demand service? Because we need to be mindful of what the impact is, fiscal impact is, as well as are we providing the very best service and increasing ridership. So are we looking at it with that fine-grained detail?
So I think that's something that we could certainly explore a bit further. I would expect, based on the type of service that we're proposing in that step towards higher ridership, those costs per rider could change pretty dramatically. And with on-demand, it's a service we don't have. It's certainly something that we can benchmark with other agencies to see what their costs per rider are as well. But that's something that we can certainly look a bit more into.
Kali, we don't think that the cost of delivery of service for on-demand is going to approach what it is for mobility, right?
Not at all. Not at all. And I just want to clarify, are you talking cost per rider or revenue per rider, just for Ryan's analysis?
Well, they're all related, so.
Okay. Okay.
The net impact, I guess.
Yeah, the net impact, absolutely.
Okay. Ms. Scott.
A couple questions. First of all, for the public hearings, how did you determine where to actually have the public hearings? What criteria did you use? What specifics?
Certainly. So with the public hearings, the upcoming ones, similar process is what we used with the public meetings. And I'm looking around to see if anybody from the external affairs team who might be able to get in some more specifics than me. But we wanted to make sure there was adequate capacity for a good crowd to attend. We also wanted to make sure there was adequate display space. We had a lot of materials to present and boards, technological capabilities. So we did have some interactive things, presentations, all of those things factored into the selection of the specific places. We also really were looking at public facilities, so senior centers, library branches, places that would be open to the public and that were kind of focal points in the community. So those were part of those criteria that played into it.
And the reason I ask is because I attended the public hearings in DeKalb County. Some of them were well attended. A couple I felt should have been in near areas that would have had more capacity as well as more participation. Sure. So I wondered how that, for instance, a location 2 blocks down the road would have been more attended
Sure.
than a location 2 blocks up. And that was one concern, is that it was always accessible also to MARTA riders.
Absolutely.
To attend the meetings. The other question I have is, with the public comments, the written comments, are they all individually read?
Yes, they are. Yeah, our team reviewed as we did the process, as we were in the public engagement period. We had a log that was constantly being updated, and our team did go through and read through each one. Our consultant team also did a lot of processing to try and make it easy to summarize at the end of that, but we were actively reviewing as they came in.
And the reason I'm asking specifically is that one of the meetings that I attended downtown Decatur, there was grave concern concerning Route 30.
Yes.
And the proposed changes. So literally I rode the route to understand the concern from the citizens. And I wonder, I personally would like to know how we address some of those concerns on Route 30. I'm not asking it today.
Certainly.
But I definitely would like to know, because there was grave concern from the attendees. And I believe it has something to do, it comes from Lindbergh this way. It goes
does.
down La Vista Road, and they were very concerned about the changes and modifications for that route. And I don't have my notes with me from that meeting, but there was another route as well. The location they're concerned about, and Jim, you're probably very familiar with this location, near downtown Decatur in Emory Hospital. There have been several senior living facilities open in that area, and they are more prone to transit. So I would definitely be concerned about listening to the citizens there at DeKalb. I'm concerned about their concern.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the comments. And
Thank you.
One thing, if I could add, that I should have mentioned in the list of considerations is, of course, access to our system. So we did a very careful screening at the very start of identifying the list of potential places to make sure that it was either directly on a MARTA bus route or within a reasonable walking distance. We actually disqualified quite a few otherwise really great locations, technologically wise, or community centers that just simply weren't close enough to a bus route. So we did make sure to factor that in as a primary consideration.
And listening to the citizens at the downtown Decatur meeting, as I said, there's construction, and I know we're talking about 26 and further, but the construction that's taking place in that area is going to increase the living space and the riders. So I would like to make sure that those in that area would be able to be serviced for transit as well.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Ms. Pollock.
Thanks, Ryan. Awesome work. I'm really excited about this, and not just because the number 2 received a lot of comments, which we all know is my personal boss. I, kind of following on Ms. Scott's statement, I think I may have framed a similar question previously, but when y'all go back out for public hearings, will you be able to show what changes you've made since the last round and just how it ties to comments? Because I understand and know y'all are being really intentional about that, and I just want to make sure that the public also sees how thoughtful you've been and where you've been able to respond, and in areas where you can't necessarily, why that is.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be able to summarize the changes and relate them to what we heard.
Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Mr. Pollan?
Right, I understand basically we are increasing the frequency on the high usage routes and making it more accessible. My question is, if you looked at the total service miles,
yes,
which takes into account the high frequency routes, where would the total service miles be at the end of this versus where it was before we started the study? I'm just trying to get a sense for, we're creating more frequency, maybe fewer routes, total service miles, how would that compare before and after?
Sure. It's a near neutral exercise. So looking at the fixed route in particular, it's roughly the same amount of service that we have scheduled into the system today. And then beyond that, there is a small additional amount of service hours, miles for an on-demand service being a thing that's a little difficult to predict. But there is an additional portion for that on-demand service. But it's roughly similar to what we have in the system today.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right. If no more questions, I'll just make a couple comments. One, thank you. I think this was very well done. It's been very professional. And 3 things that just come to mind for me. One, personal. You mentioned the West End. You mentioned a couple places. I live in the West End, and I think it's really important for all of us as we go through this process to realize we have a bus network that was built in the 1970s, and there are tons of new destinations and places and needs and density and so many things that did not exist. So, you know, we're not doing this just to make change. We're doing it because the city has changed and we maybe have not reflected that, and I think that's really important. 2, nothing great is simple, and nothing that's really difficult is done unanimously. We're going to hear a lot of pushback. That is fully expected. And I think, you know, that means that we made tough decisions. That means that we made trade-offs. That means that there's other folks and different places that are getting service in different ways, and that's just part of change. And then 3, I think really important, we won't be perfect. This won't be perfect. But our network today is definitely not perfect. We just looked at the ridership metrics and all of it, and I think there's a lot of room to improve, and I feel very confident this is going to move us in this direction. My one question to you would just be, as we go through this process and we get to voting on the final changes and moving forward, what would you say to the board to help us have full conviction that we're making the right decision here, as we may hear, you know, differing perspectives from others?
Sure. With this network, I mean, the goal here is to try and encourage ridership. The base of that is to try and make the system more convenient and easy to use. So there were some statistics and everything that we had in the presentations for the public. We're going from 5 areas of the system, one of them particularly small with frequent 15-minute service, to about 18 in the draft. And these kinds of changes with the trade-offs that Mr. Zagabe mentioned are really intended to make our system more convenient for as many people as possible, to encourage daily use, to encourage ridership, and hopefully just make it a more efficient system for our passengers to use. So there's kind of the version on paper, but the ultimate net effect is that this should make MARTA a much simpler and more frequent system, just a lot more convenient for people to use.
Wonderful.
Let me just add on to that. First of all, Ryan, I echo what Jacob just said. Thank you very much for all the work you've done. It's obvious that you guys have been very intentional about the work you've done and very responsive to the customer comments. When Jacob started speaking, the phrase in my mind was "no good deed goes unpunished." So we have to be bold as a group and recognize that the motivated speakers in this process will be the ones that feel compelled because a sense of loss of a route or a frequency that they once had. The vast majority of folks that are happy or at least neutral, as you've said, will be a lot more silent in this process. So I would add that to the considerations of this board as we move forward in an era where we're required to be bold, is that you're going to be hearing the motivated speakers more so than the unmotivated speakers. And then, of course, ridership. You know, universally we want to increase our ridership, and there are all kinds of examples in other transit agencies throughout the country where this work does just that. And it doesn't just affect ridership as we know it. It's really about preparing a system that encourages more ridership in the future. So, you know, it's a twofold benefit as we start to contemplate the 2 million people that are coming here in the next 25 years. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, with that, we go to other matters. If none, this committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
In the interest of time, we will go ahead and call the Ops and Safety meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from March 27th, 2025. I'll entertain a motion in a second. It is moved and seconded. Any discussion? Please vote. The minutes are adopted. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for body-worn cameras, video storage, and accessories, contract number RFP P47663, and we'll turn it over to Chief Crayer.
Good morning, Chair Worthy, Vice Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, members of the Operations and Safety Committee. I'm Scott Crayer, Chief of Police for MARTA. Direct your attention to item number 2, resolution authorizing modification of contractual services for body-worn cameras, video storage, and accessories P47663. So just a quick history lesson what this contract consists of. This is our body-worn camera contract is what I call it. So every officer in the MARTA Police Department, from the majors on down, have a body-worn camera that they wear every day. Along with our sworn officers, we now, because of this contract, are able to expand this project to where our field protective specialists or our non-sworn police officers that you see on the system also wear a body-worn camera. And we had an incident just 2 nights ago where a field protective specialist was checking a station at 1 o'clock in the morning and got violently attacked by an individual. And we were able to use that evidence to get a no bond and a felony charges on this individual over at the DA's office. So it's very vital to their safety and to the safety of our citizens that we protect. The Taser 10, Taser is a brand name now, but that's the Taser that our officers carry. The 10 is the most updated, most technologically advanced Taser that they carry. And Axon owns the rights to that. There's no other company in the United States that offers tasers to police. The signal sidearm device is a little device on our officers' holsters. So again, this is another mechanism for the activation of the camera. So if any of our officers withdraw their weapon, it automatically turns on their body-worn camera without them having to do it manually. And then last but not least is the software that's included. And this operates all of this equipment, and this also communicates not only with our department, but with our legal department, our DA offices that we operate in, and anybody else that has access to these videos, including myself. So a little history again. Back in 2024, actually it was 2023, Axon came to us for an opportunity to expand the existing contract we have with them for a cost savings of a little over $600,000. We initially said that the new contract was going to cost us $994,000 a year if we waited till 26 to renew, but we pay $832,000 a year if we went ahead and did it now, and it's also and extended all the way to 2029. This contract includes any new equipment that Axon puts out, any body-worn camera, taser, software, anything that's updated in that time frame is upgraded as part of the contract. I came to you in February 2024 and requested an extension of that contract to 2029, and the cost was $629,000. We did that, you guys approved it, and then we got it into in-house and finance and contract and compliance, and we realized there was a mistake in the actual cost. Now the contract itself did not change. Nothing's changed internally in the contract. Everything's exactly like it was written from day one. But the actual cost was $2,675,000 over the 8 years. So what we need is an additional $2,045,000 to fund this contract through 2029. So again, our current contract is almost $4 million, and it's modified in 2024, and it expires in 29. The corrected increase on the contract is $2,045,904.50. An audit is not required because there's nothing changed within the contract itself as far as the terms and conditions. And there's no DEB goal because this is a modification to a contract. So with that, I'm respectfully requesting authorization for a modification in contractual services for body-worn cameras, video storage, and accessories P47663 in the amount of $2,045,904.50. The total contract amount will increase to $6,032,840.50 for an 8-year term ending in 29. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Worthy.
The matter has been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, please vote. The resolution passes. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the installation of 2024 Ford Police Explorer equipment upfitting, IFB B50638. Still with the chief.
Thank you. This resolution is authorizing the award of a contract for 45 utility police interceptors upfitting, B50638. So the upfitting process, we just purchased, you guys approved the $2 million contract to purchase 45 new police vehicles. The reason for that was because of the delay in manufacturing for almost 5 years because of COVID. So we had to buy so many at one time. Those are being built, and we expect delivery in June. But these vehicles arrive about 80% complete. So what the vehicle manufacturer doesn't do is they don't put in the equipment that we use every day as police officers. So of the 45 vehicles, there's 25 different items that will be installed once we get the new vehicle. That includes radios, sirens, emergency equipment, push bars, things like that. The prisoner seats in the back, lock boxes. Of the 45 vehicles, 15 of them will be new K9 vehicles. And those will include those 25 items plus the additional items of the K9 cage. That's a specialty item that we have to order to fit the K9. And with that is also a cooling system that they use to cool the dog when they're out on the scenes. So to summarize, we're expecting 45 new patrol vehicles in the next couple of months. We do not have the ability to have the manufacturer do this, so we have to go out and bid and have a company put this equipment in. A competitive bid contract was awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, West Chatham Warning Services, in the amount of $670,397.70 for a 1-year term. We expect them to complete all the upfitting within that 1 year. There's no DBE goal assigned to this contract because there are no certified DBE companies in this industry of upfitting. So I'm respectfully requesting authorization to enter a contract with West Chatham Warning Services for 45 vehicle upfittings, B50638, in the amount of $670,397.70 for a 1-year term. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman Worthy.
I'll entertain a motion in a second. It has been moved and seconded. Mr. Durrett.
A few years ago, the Buckhead Community Improvement District was working with the City of Atlanta on the purchase of vehicles for APD, and I know that a big bottleneck in getting those vehicles out was a lack of outfitters to be able to take those and upfit them to the needs of the police department. So I'm guessing that that bottleneck no longer exists.
Oh, it does. It's a small niche. There's only a few companies in the state that do it. So we're going to have to get in line. I have already spoken to their leadership team on my expectations if they win this contract. So we're very clear
1 year.
that you have a window. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Please vote. Oh, sorry.
No. It's regarding a vote. I'm for it at the mouse.
Oh.
Yeah.
The resolution passes. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4, resolution authorizing rejection of bids received for the procurement and disposal of bus battery services, IFB B50594. Mr. Johnson.
Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Eric Johnson, Director of Bus Maintenance for MARTA. This is a resolution authorizing, oh, I'm sorry, I went too far. We would like to cancel an IFB that was issued for a 5-year contract to supply bus and non-revenue automotive batteries. The quantities listed in the IFB were found to be incorrect and inflated. The responsive and responsible bidder may have provided discounts based on listed quantities. In accordance with standard authority procedures, staff has determined that it is in the best interest of the authority to reject all bids for the procurement and disposal of bus batteries, IFB 50594. The MARTA Act requires authorization to cancel and resolicit. MARTA will resolicit with amended quantities. Thank you.
I will entertain a motion in a second. It has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Please vote. The resolution passes. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 5 is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of environmental engineering compliance and sustainability consulting services, AE 50490. Ms. Hubble.
Hi, good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. My name is Leslie Hubble. I'm the Director of Environmental Health and Safety within the Department of Safety and Quality Assurance. This is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for environmental engineering, compliance, and sustainability consulting services, AE 50490. Today I'll review the scope of work, our previous contract history, the contract terms and value, our solicitation timeline and selection process, and the award. So this contract assists the authority with environmental engineering services and with maintaining compliance with our current environmental regulations that govern how we manage hazardous waste, stormwater, wastewater, storage tanks, air emissions, remediation projects, and due diligence. The contract also supports our ISO 14001 environmental management system and sustainability programs. This is a follow-on contract. The previous contract covered a span of 10 years, and through March of 2025, we spent a little over $25 million. This contract has assisted the Office of Environmental Health and Safety with meeting our environmental compliance obligations, which has included the submission of over 1,000 regulatory reports and the maintenance of MARTA's 32 environmental permits and registrations. We have closed 19 underground storage tanks for the duration of the contract, repaired multiple above-ground tanks, completed and received no further actions from the state on remediation projects at Brady, Laredo, and 455 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, and we continue remediation on our one remaining site at Hamilton Bus Garage. We've completed numerous Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessments in support of real estate and TOD, expanded our ISO 14001 EMS to 11 facilities, completed environmental designs for the Hamilton Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant, and are currently wrapping up designs for our upcoming tank replacement project, detention pond rehabilitations, and other water quality projects. We've also done MARTA's sustainability reporting, APTA reporting, and greenhouse gas emissions reporting. So the new contract will have a 5-year base term with no option years, a 30% DBE goal, and a total contract value of $15,468,000. This is the solicitation timeline shown on the screen. The Source Evaluation Committee received 8 proposals, selected the top 3 vendors to present. Those were Stantec Consulting Services, Terracon Consultants, and WSP USA. The committee determined that its top 2 firms, WSP and Stantec, were the most qualified to be awarded the contract. The selection committee determined that a multi-award to the top 2 firms, WSP and Stantec, would be most beneficial to the authority. The anticipated expected execution date for this contract is July 1st, with a total not to exceed value of $15,468,000. I respectfully request the approval of the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for environmental engineering, compliance, and sustainability consulting services, AE 50490, to WSP USA Inc. and Stantec Consulting Services Inc. in the amount of $15,468,000. Thank you for your time. Chairman Worthy, I'll turn it over to you for consideration.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Durrett?
Leslie, I'm curious to know how this 5-year contract, in terms of dollars, compares to whatever it is replacing.
So the total contract value for the previous 10-year contract was $30 million.
So it's equivalent.
It's about equivalent, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Frierson?
Yes, so the DPE goal equals 30%. Is that what it is based on the 2 companies that were selected? Or
That was determined by diversity and inclusion and is the same as our current contract.
Oh, it is. So that is a goal to be reached. It's not one that has been.
Well, I think we're sitting at 28% or something on the current contract,
Okay,
so I think that's achievable.
Yeah,
Do
that's
you
all
have any
that-
other information?
Yes, that's the goal for this particular contract. The current one has the same goal, and yes, it will probably be reached by the end of it. It's around 28 or 29% right now.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? Please vote. The resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 6 is a resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for supplemental mobility operations and maintenance services, RFP P43706. Ms. Davis.
Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Kalisha Davis, and I'm the Director of Mobility Services. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 6, a resolution authorizing the modification of supplemental mobility operations and maintenance services contract P43706. In August 2024, the board approved Mobility's request to proceed with the solicitation of all contracted mobility services. The solicitation, which is still underway, includes the reconsolidation of operations, maintenance, scheduling, and dispatching services under a single contract, returning to the original service model that existed at the initial outsourcing. The contract solicitations were open to the public in November 2024 through March 2025, and proposals are currently under review for award in accordance with MARTA's established procurement policies and procedures. Contract P43706, serviced by A National Limousine, is currently set to expire June 30th, 2025, before the potential transition of contractors is stable enough to sustain the discontinuation of a single service provider. I am therefore requesting a 3-month extension to September 30th, 2025, so that we can get through the procurements of all 3 mobility operations contracts to get the best services for the authority. Since assuming service in December of 2022, A National, who operates out of the Hamilton Garage, has consistently operated a minimum of 20% of the mobility service, and as a certified DBE, the overall contract meets the DBE requirement. To date in FY25, A National has successfully performed 102,617 trips and have at times exceeded 30% of the daily trip count. They have maintained positive productivity to include on-time performance that is on or within the acceptable range of the KPI target, which has contributed significantly to the recent upward trajectory of mobility's overall on-time performance. They've also supported several capital projects and special events with shuttle service. With A National's noted performance and service balance, modifying contract P43706 to extend an additional 3 months is critical to help mitigate the risk of service degradation and aid in minimizing service disruptions and adverse impact to customers during the potential transition of contractors. With A National agreeing in writing to uphold their current rate, no audit is required for this modification. The estimated cost of the 3-month extension is $2,801,662.57. The Office of Mobility respectfully requests the approval of a resolution to extend contract with A National Limousine for 3 months and increase the contract value by $2,801,662.57. Thank you, Chair Worthy. I turn the matter back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, please vote. The resolution passes. And Ms. Davis, you're still at the podium for agenda item number 7, which is a briefing on the overview of mobility accomplishments.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Worthy. Please turn your attention to agenda item number 7, which is an overview of recent accomplishments within the Office of Mobility Services. I'll begin by introducing and acknowledging the recent career accomplishments of the Mobility Program Management Team. First is Mr. Roosevelt Stripling, the Support Services Program Manager who oversees our eligibility and reservation sections. The longest tenured MARTA employee on the team, Mr. Stripling recently celebrated 34 combined years of service at MARTA. Next is the Maintenance Program Manager, Mr. Russell Daniel, who is celebrating 25 years of service today. Thirdly is Mr. Delton Quarles, an 18-year MARTA employee who, as of just last month, is the newly promoted Operations Program Manager. And lastly, I humbly acknowledge my own recent appointment to the position of Director of the office in which I started my career at MARTA 24 years ago. In the next slides, I'll review Mobility's KPIs and strategies undertaken to drive positive performance. Starting first with the on-time performance, Mobility has taken a noticeably positive turn in this area this fiscal year, achieving the 90% target for the last 4 consecutive months. There were several months, even preceding FY25, where Mobility was unsuccessful in achieving on-time targets. However, the key drivers of the recent positive trending on-time performance include an overhaul of the scheduling and dispatching systems and practices this past October, which resulted in an improved run cut and more efficient distribution of resources for better service coverage. The positive impact of the October overhaul was evident early on as the missed trips, which is the missed trip rates, which is closely tied to the on-time performance, exceeded the target in November. And the recent positive performance has many Mobility customers eager and excited about riding the service. Vehicle reliability is a major organ of service delivery, and our mean distance between failures has consistently exceeded the 15,000-mile target this fiscal year. We have, however, noted a downward trend since December. One approach we've taken to address the aging fleet will be spotlighted in a future slide, but the critical campaigns currently underway to drive reliability and stay above target are transmissions overhauls, engine replacements, and seasonal HVAC revitalizations, which is a hot ticket item as we progress towards warmer months. With the previous two slides spotlighting the improvement of our flagship KPIs, we've also seen consistent favorable performance with the reservations call abandonment rate and customer complaints. However, we recognize that there is still critical work to be done to drive needed improvement and reduction with reservations call wait time and collisions. Other improvement strategies we've employed to drive performance fall under two primary categories: workforce stabilization and development, and compliance oversight and management. With the workforce, there were key contract management personnel changes, training program overhauls, aggressive hiring, and shift restructuring. And the compliance initiatives, which are ongoing, include daily audits and inspections, more direct focus on the data we collect and the data we report, and more in-depth oversight of our subcontractors. And although it's not listed, direct customer engagement by way of our monthly MAC meetings and our annual town hall meetings, they allow us to collect customer input that help us drive change. On the horizon are the 36 new mobility vehicles that were approved for procurement just a few months ago. I'm happy to share that we're expecting the first round delivery by end of this month. And in addition to these vehicles not only further diversifying the mobility fleet, we expect that they will drive a reversal of our downward trending mean distance between failure. To conclude, mobility is diligently striving to uphold recent positive performance and continue improving service quality with a renewed focus on customer centricity, service positivity to deliver safe, clean, and reliable paratransit service to MARTA riders. Thank you. Back to you, Chairman Worthy.
Thank you so much, Ms. Davis. Any questions, comments? Mr. Friars.
Yes, thank you for the information. I'm glad to see some of the trends are moving in a favorable direction with your leadership. That's great. I just had a couple of questions. I want to understand, so how do you measure the on-time performance? How do you measure that?
So I'll try to not go down a rabbit hole. Okay. So each trip has a ready time.
All right.
And the on-time performance is based on your arrival at the start of that ready time or within 30 minutes beyond that ready time. So if I'm scheduled to pick you up and your ready time is 9:30, I'm not late until 10:01. So if I get there between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, I am on time.
Okay. And is that for all pickups, whether you drop them off, but it's on the pickup side?
Yes.
Correct?
And we have a similar non-front facing KPI, or a measurement, I'll say, for drop-offs. Drop-offs, we have to drop you off on time to be counted. I think it's actually within, is it 30 minutes? So it's actually 30 minutes on the drop-off as well, within 30 minutes on the drop-off as well. But it's a measurement, not necessarily a KPI.
Okay. And the software that you're using to do that, is that done through some particular software, or is that just kind of done through what dispatch says when they set the times up for the pickups and drop-off?
Yes, sir. It's currently done through Trapeze Pass.
It is? Okay.
Yes. And just a little more background. So reservations take the call from takes the booking from the customers, and that's where the pickup time or the scheduled ready time is established. And then, of course, service delivery through our operators. The goal is to perform those trips within that 30-minute time frame.
Okay, great. My next question has to do with how do you collect the complaints? You say onboarding complaints. Is that done through what avenues do you collect these complaints?
So complaints are filtered through MARTA's customer service. MARTA,
right.
We accept complaints directly, and then I'm not overly familiar with customer services process. However, those complaints received by MARTA customer service are filtered through to either our contractors or the ones that belong to the MARTA group within mobility. We handle them and respond back to customer service. And those complaints that we receive directly from customers, we will, in order to track that activity, we will direct them to customer service so they can lodge a formal complaint, but we also address those head on.
Okay, so if a rider has a complaint at that time with the driver? Does the driver captures any of those complaints, or is that something they have to call in and do?
Not really. The driver should direct them to customer service again so that they can lodge it formally. However, operators are encouraged to engage, to address to the degree that they can the customer's concerns, but mostly direct them internally either to customer service for a complaint or even to management.
Okay, okay. Carly, my question is, this one's for you. I think it would be good if we found a way to capture those complaints without having them calling in for them, because I think that there's riders that are experiencing some issues and they feel like nobody's hearing what they're saying. But I asked the question, well, how do you communicate that? I don't know if there's a way in which you can do that while they're on the vehicle, maybe through the apps. I don't know if there's another way to do that, but I think that's good to get the right pulse on what people are experiencing in their rides. That just kind of helps me address their concerns that they have, knowing that they've had a clear way of communicating what that looks like.
Thank you, Rod. Kalisha, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's also true that a rider on the mobility service can complain the same way a rider on fixed route can. So whether you're on the vehicle or days afterwards, you can go online and contact MARTA or go through our customer service line and log the complaint, even if it was on a mobility service as opposed to fixed route, and then we will get it to the right place. So they've got that. And then Kalisha also referenced the annual town hall, which is a great place for us to get trends in complaints, and we've taken a lot of action based on the information that we get at the town halls.
Okay, okay, good. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure I have clarity on that, because like I say, riders they get frustrated with mobility, their experience, and I want to make sure that their voices are being heard. So thank you. I appreciate what you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Bolton Harris.
Thank you, and congratulations on your promotion and your 24 years of service.
Thank you.
Obviously, I'm in healthcare, and I see a lot of our patients that we serve that utilize the mobility services, and I hear a lot of, it's good to see the information because that you all are improving for the customers. My question for you is, like, how do you acquisition new riders as far as in this program? Because sometimes I hear things about where they're on a wait list, and so, like I said, from my side, I'm not, I don't understand it, but just having more information to be able to communicate to the patients that my team serves about how to get a part of the mobility program.
So the eligibility process, and thank you for your question, the eligibility process, it is application based. After they submit their application, it's a two-part application where it's their information, and then there's a medical portion where the medical provider has to fill out a piece kind of detailing their disability. After the application is received, the applicants are brought in for an assessment where they have to physically assess the customer or the applicant's ability to ride MARTA's full family of services, whether that's traversing different types of terrain, their ability to walk up steps, physically get on a train, physically get on the bus, so on and so forth, to determine the conditions of their eligibility, which ranges from unconditional, which means you can ride paratransit all the time based on your disability, or there's conditional, which means you can walk a short distance. So basically, mobility is, I don't want to say obligated, it's conditional. So for those who can only walk a certain distance, then that is the condition of your eligibility. Or for those who can ride bus but can't traverse the train, or vice versa, that is the condition of their eligibility. Once the condition is, the eligibility is determined by FTA guidelines, and Mr. Stripling, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a 21-day period between the determination and the mailing out of the documents. Great. So after you've been determined conditional, non-conditional, or ineligible, we have 21 days to notify you in writing of that determination. If you're granted eligibility, it goes through the part where you get your breeze card and you can ride. If you're deemed ineligible, then you're not eligible to ride, and I think you can keep applying. you have the right to appeal. You have the right to appeal the ruling that says you're not eligible, and it's the standard appeals process where basically you have to state your case and it goes back for review.
So total time of the process, because it just, I mean, like, I understand why you have to be very specific about it, but it just seems laborious from the consumer side that if I have a disability and having to go through, you know, seems like a lot of hurdles to prove that I'm in need of a service. So what's the time frame that a person would have to go through that?
I will yield that question to Mr. Roosevelt Stripley. He is the subject matter expert for all things eligibility.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. As indicated, FTA gives us 21 calendar days to process that determination. Currently, we are averaging around 9 days. And so the process is, and the requirement is to determine whether the individual's abilities prevent them from riding fixed route services. So because an individual has a disability, I can self-report that I have disabilities. However, I am capable of riding fixed route services. So disabilities in and of themselves do not prevent an individual from riding fixed route services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Odd.
Yes. So can you sort of summarize what the current status of the fleet is between, I know we're getting some new vehicles, which is great, and some have been overhauled. So sort of where does that leave you on, are there still going to be ongoing, you know, maintenance fleet issues, or are you pretty, you know, have gotten most of the vehicles, either they're going to be replaced with new ones or they've, you know, undergone their maintenance?
Thank you for your question. So our current fleet is roughly 6 years old. Outside of the Chrysler Pacifica minivans that we procured in 2023, our L-van fleet, I'll say it that way, our L-van fleet is 6 years old. The last purchase was in 2019. So with the everyday wear and tear, we have several that have exceeded 275,000 miles, and we're still running them daily, so we're accumulating miles. Just the basic wear and tear, it's what is leading to the diminishing of capacity, if you will. So the current state, our contractors are doing an excellent job in maintaining them for service. Again, that's why we've done so well, thankfully, with our mean distance between failure. It is increasingly challenging, though, however, because the age of the vehicles, parts are being discontinued, so on and so forth. So with the new incoming vehicles, the plan is to replace the ones that are literally on their last leg and then replenish where we can. There is, and Mr. Wright and Mr. Johnson pull me to the side if I say something different. There is a plan, a fleet replacement plan in the works to replace the entire fleet over the course of approximately 5 years, 20% annually. So hopefully within the next, I would say in the next 2 years, we would have a good portion of our fleet that are newer vehicles, so that we will increase our mean distance between failures.
Right. Thank you.
Ms. Scott.
Just a quick question. In regards to scheduling, is there specific scheduling for our clients that are, maybe they go to dialysis 3 times a week, every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday? So do we already have those scheduled in advance, knowing that they will require the services on those specific dates?
Thank you for your question. So we do have what's called subscription service, and it is exactly for what you just stated, those people who have that established pattern, same day, same time, so on and so forth. Everyone who, say, is on dialysis doesn't have the subscription service, because there is a percentage that we can put on subscription service. Everybody can't have it, and it's based on time capacity within a set time frame. So many subscriptions per hour or minute. I got it right. So many, subscriptions can fit within a specific time block. So everyone who has that recurring pattern, unfortunately, can't get on subscription. However, there are controls in place where if you receive so many cancellations within a certain time frame and or your pattern changes, then you are removed from subscription, still eligible to ride the service at the same frequency, but you're removed from subscription, which makes room for other people to get on subscription.
And just quickly, sorry, Mr. Chair, how does this also affect how we retrieve those patients or our riders from whatever services they're receiving?
It doesn't necessarily impact how we,
like the time frame we may need to pick them up, because they may not be at a specific time frame when receiving the medical service.
So in that regard, we have what's called will call.
Okay.
So dialysis is the most frequent user of will call. Their services have not ended, it's delayed for what have you, but your ready time has approached and your bus is either outside or on its way. You can call and say, hey, dispatch, unfortunately, I'm still under treatment. I need to be placed on will call. So what will happen is the standing subscription trip that you have, it'll be canceled and you'll be placed on will call so that when you're ready, you can call back and say, my services are done, I'm ready for pickup, and we will provide you with the first available trip to transport you to your destination.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Well, Kalisha, Roosevelt, Russell, Delton, thank you for your many, many years of dedicated service to MARTA. This was very helpful and very important topic, taking care of some of our most vulnerable friends and neighbors. So thank you very much and congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. The final item on the agenda is another briefing on heavy rail and streetcar KPIs, and I'll turn it over to Jorge and Daniel.
Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Jorge Bernard. I'm the Interim Deputy Chief for Rail Operations, and may I direct you to agenda item number 8. Today I'll be talking to you along with Mr. Daniel Heck regarding the heavy rail and streetcar key performance indicators. A few things that I will mention before we start on the presentations. We'll be talking about the streetcar on-time performance, the heavy rail operations on-time performance, some of the contributing factors to what those on-time performance have been for the past year, some improvements, and talk about the fleet background and the fleet reliability. As you can see in this slide, this is more specifically to the streetcar, looking over the last 12 months of service. The blue line here indicates what our current on-time performance is, and highlighted in a dotted line is the previous year on-time performance. As you can see, the current year pretty much mirrors the previous years on our on-time performance on the streetcar, with one major exception, as you can see, a dip on January. The reason for this dip in January was 2 major severe weather in occurrences that took place in January, where we had to shut down the streetcar because of safety concerns with the icing conditions. Also, the MLK parade, we had to shut down for partial of the day due to the parade, since it was kind of crossing through across our streetcar path. And for those situations or those scenarios, our on-time performance dropped below our target, which is 85%. With regards to heavy rail, paints a little bit of a different picture here. In this slide, you can see there's a couple of different line graphs here that I will be talking specifically. The blue line represents the east-west on-time performance. The red line represents the north-south on-time performance. The green line represents what our target is of 95%, and the black line represents the combined on-time performance for both lines combined. As you can see, our combined on-time performance has been slightly above our target of 95%, up to the month of October when it reached our target. And then in the month of November, it dropped below our target of 95%. So in the next few slides, I will be talking specifically about those months where the target or the OTP dropped below the target value. Some of the contributing factors, and there are many factors that contribute to our on-time performance, but I'll be talking more specifically about the contributing factors that contributed to the majority of our service interruptions. In this particular case, you can see the trending for staffing, external interruptions, and fleet reliability. So as you can see, the yellow line there is our staffing concerns, our staffing issues that provided a lot of negative impact to our on-time performance. And in the graph, you can see those are the number of trips that were impacted by each particular category. The green line on the graphs, you'll see that those are external disruptions. Those are basically people interacting with the train or our system in a negative way to impact our on-time performance. And the blue line, you see what the fleet reliability has been for those months where we dropped below our target value of 95%. So specifically within the staffing, some of the things that affected our on-time performance is obviously the vacancies and the absenteeism. We have discussed about this in the past, and we are working very hard, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a later slide. We've been working very hard to get our staffing levels to where we want them to be, what our target goals are. And also in the month of December, highlighted in red in this particular slide, you see one of the impacts for the month of December was the derailment that we had at the King Memorial Interlochen, which I spoke about in a previous briefing. The other contributing factors with regards to the external disruptions, this again, like I mentioned, is people interacting with the trains and how it affects our service. In the blue graph you see here is door obstructions. These are people that are either holding the doors or dropping debris that is causing an obstruction on the trackway of the door, preventing the doors from the train from either closing properly or opening properly, resulting in delays and service interruptions. In the more of a maroon color here is pull emergency door cords. These are individuals that actually go out and pull the emergency door cord on the train, and once those cords are pulled, that train would not be able to move, causing additional delays. And in both of these instances, the operator would have to key the train down, meaning that they have to stop the service at whatever location they are, identify which car and which doors are being affected, and make corrections to those particular doors in order for them to proceed with their travels on the train. The next graph here in yellow you see is medical emergencies or injuries or incidents that the customers are requiring medical assistance. And again, in this particular instance, we have to stop the train wherever we are located, request for medical assistance, EMS. We contact MARTA Police, and MARTA Police would assist us in those particular situations as well. And again, the train stops at that location until we can get assistance to those customers. And you'll see the trend on this one, particularly in the month of January, there was a lot more incidents where we required additional medical assistance. And in the green, which is more concerning to us, is the trespassers. These are individuals that are trespassing on our trackway, either doing it via the station, exiting from the platform to the trackway, or trying to jump from the fences in other locations in between stations. And this one is particularly troublesome for us because we have to de-energize third rail power when we have these situations. And when we have to de-energize third rail power, that means that we stop traffic not only in the direction that those individuals are, but we stop it in both directions, causing additional delays, necessitating for us to establish what we call a bus bridge to augment what our service is in the lack of service for those customers on the train, and augment that also with what we call Market Connect, where we try to partner up with Uber and Lyft to provide another means of travel for our customers. And I'll be talking a little bit more about other impacts with regards to the trespassers as well. Some of the improvements that we are doing to make sure that we try to improve our on-time performance is we have been focusing on our staffing levels. So how we do this is we maintain a steady stream of employees that are coming over to rail to become rail operators. We have been maximizing our classes to make sure that we have a sufficient number of employees available to us to operate the trains. And we've been averaging about 20 individuals every time we start a class. Those classes last approximately 75 days, so it's very time consuming for us to go through that process, but have been very successful in trying to get our numbers as far as our staffing goes to get them back up to where we want them to be with our goal. Our allocated staff for rail operators is currently at 153 with an authorization to overfill up to 169. And we're reaching the 153. As of the last class, we graduated 14 individuals about 2 weeks ago. We also keep the rail operators in the yards, meaning that our yard operators operate both in the mainland in the revenue trains. We also have yard operators. They're the same operators that operate the train in the yards, and their primary responsibility in the yard is to be able to move the trains in and out of the maintenance facility so that we can get the necessary repair done on those vehicles so that we have them available for us the next business day or for the next day's operation. So what we do is we always make sure that we leave enough people in the yards to make sure that we make those moves necessary for railcar maintenance to make those necessary repairs on the vehicles. We're also doing scenario-based training with both our controllers and supervisors. So as we see that incidents are happening and we see how it's affecting our on-time performance, because we do have a lot of new individuals in our areas, we do scenario-based training so that we can go over what we've learned from this incident and be able to develop the skills and the ability for our staff to be able to respond faster and be able to respond in a manner that we can get the service back on track more timely as we continue. As I mentioned, we do have a lot of operators that we are recently graduating, so they have to develop their skills as they continue, and that's part of the things that we're using to be able to develop them as well. And the last point that I want to talk about here is also going to be regarding the individuals when we have the individuals that go wayside that are trespassing, because we have to de-energize third rail power. There are times where we're not able to remotely energize the power back up so that we can get the service back on track. So one of the things that we do is we contact our partners at the electrical power and equipment staff, and we dispatch them to the areas where we have to de-energize the power, so that in the event that we have an issue where we cannot energize it remotely, they are already en route, if not already at the location, so they can do it manually from the locations that were affected as far as the power being de-energized. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Daniel Heck, Deputy Chief Mechanical Officer.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think I'm the guy keeping you all from lunch, so I'm going to keep this briefing brief. I'm Daniel Hecht. I'm the Deputy Chief Mechanical Officer. I'll be discussing fleet reliability as it relates to key performance indicators. Here's some quick information on the fleet background. MARTA has 4 different fleet types, 3 of which are currently in service. The 310 fleet was made in the late 70s to early 80s, the 311 fleet in the mid 80s, and the 312 fleet in the early 2000s. And of course, you all are aware MARTA is procuring the new fleet of Stadler cars. What's important to note here is the age of our fleet. MARTA operates one of the oldest rail fleets in the world, and while the 312 fleet is newer at 20 to 25 years old, it has reliability issues. The bulk of our fleet mileage, over 75%, are operated by cars that are around 40 to 45 years old. With this comes challenges, and this is obviously one of the main drivers for the procurement of the Stadler CQ400 series railcars. So I'm going to take a few minutes and step down a couple layers into what drives fleet reliability, how we track reliability, then bring us back up to a strategic level on fleet utilization and initiatives that improve the fleet. So first step down, the mean distance between failure National Transit Database number, MDBF NTD number, it's in your board packet, that's the public-facing KPI, that accounts for reliability problems that result in delays that prevent a rail car from completing its scheduled trip. The graph shown here, however, is total mean distance between failure, measured in miles for the last 13 months and broken out by subfleet. This data is more granular and accounts for any failure of the railcar. A higher MDBF is better. The car goes further between issues. Now, the MDBF measurement also generally trends with the mean distance between service interruption, MDBSI metric as well. Not always, but generally. MDBSI tracks any incident that impacts the customer's trip, such as the ones Jorge just spoke about, trespassers, door cords, medical emergencies. MDBF here focuses fully on mechanical failures that impact the fleet. Now you'll notice the 311 fleet, which was built in the mid-80s, is the most reliable. This is largely due to a robust design and build quality, along with benefits from a $90 million fleet life extension program that we completed a few years ago. You'll also see the 312 fleet, the newest fleet in dark red, is the least reliable, largely attributed to build quality and subcomponent failures. Second step down, we break out overall failure counts by subsystem, and you'll see that in February, as in most months, the door system is the largest driver of failures, at 49% of all failures in that month. 5 subsystems account for 80% of all of our failures, so this points us where we need to target maintenance programs. And last step down, we look at door system failure rates. Think of a failure rate as the inverse of the mean distance between failure. A lower failure rate is better. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into the details of this, but here's the data on door reliability and a list of targeted programs tailored to address doors. Of note, we do this type of detailed analysis and corrective action for all major subcomponents on the car, not just the door systems, and we have detailed tracking information of work orders, logging of repeat failures, and we do mathematical analysis and performance statistics on the entirety of the fleet. So stepping back up to a strategic level, here's an overview of the legacy fleet railcar utilization in February. You'll see that our railcars ran a total of 1.7 million miles in February, and there's a breakdown by fleet type in the graph. Again, what's important to note here is the 312 fleet runs 23% of total miles. Historically being the least reliable fleet, we put a portion of the 312 fleet into ready reserve status, and the 312 fleet historically ran 12 to 13% of our monthly miles. With the recent service increases, the 312 fleet is running nearly twice as much, and we anticipated a drop in overall reliability because of this. MARTA strives to run our most reliable cars the most miles, which is why the 311 fleet runs almost as many miles as the 310 and 312 fleet combined, even though there's fewer of those cars. So what are we doing to improve? Jorge discussed prioritization of car movements, which leads to greater shop productivity, and I talked about the door initiatives, but we've also changed shifts in staffing to better support the changes in service levels we've recently introduced, and this is helping repair cars quicker. The board may remember a recent agenda item that upgrades our enterprise asset management software so we can better leverage the technology to track reliability in individual assets along with work productivity and production planning. We're in the very early stages of a Fleet Life Extension Phase 2 program. We continue targeted campaigns on individual components like our auxiliary power supply equipment. With the cars being 40 years old, we routinely run into obsolescence issues with parts and reliability of components that we procure, so the engineering, maintenance, and procurement team collaborate on how to manage these challenges. We're engaged with technical expertise in railcar reliability and longevity programs, utilizing existing engineering contracts that we have here at MARTA. And last, we're revising our fleet management plan and exploring fleet utilization changes. As our fleet ages gracefully towards retirement, we're shifting our focus so that railcar maintenance best supports rail operations in the interest of providing the most reliable ride for our customers. Thank you all, and Jorge and I will take any questions you have.
I have one question. When will the CQ 400 trains that are in town and that y'all are testing, when will their first trip into revenue service occur?
We are targeting testing starting later this year, and George, do you have an estimate on when that first train? I think it's actually going to be the third train set that we receive that will go into revenue service first, and I believe that's sometime in calendar year 26.
Also, there's some difficulty in giving a concrete date right now because it really depends on what the testing finds. So if in testing we find that there are systemic issues that we need to sort out, then that date's going to be pushed. But Daniel's quite right. By the end of this calendar year, we expect to have the first one rolling.
Any other questions? Thank you all for your presentation. With no other items to come before Ops and Safety, we will stand adjourned. Have a good lunch. So where's the train now?